Welcome back, Ways and Weebies, to the Challenge and Doge. But today, I'm going to be doing a tier list for all the tanks in the game with their matchups with Mauga, and I'm going to be doing a whole lot discussing how I think you should go about beating Mauga. Now, I want to make it clear from the very beginning of this video that I am going to give some takes that aren't going to be the popular opinion, but I'm not going to leave you in the dark. Like, I don't want to make it, out like, yes, I'm going to mislead all these players and make them all think that my biased opinions are correct. If I got an opinion that I realize is not a popular opinion, I will let you know what the popular opinion is, so that you can, I guess, judge for yourself. But yeah, I'm going to have some takes here, because I'm not going to lie, I feel like a lot of people go about countering Mauga the wrong way, because I do think the real way to counter him is something that's a little bit abstract and hard to imagine, but certainly not something that people aren't capable of doing. Just a lot of people don't do it, but we'll get there when we get there. I was going to rank these guys in alphabetical order as usual, but I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't be surprised if 50% of the runtime of this video is me talking about the Doomfist Mauga matchup. So, I didn't want to open with that one, and I thought, hey, I may as well divide these into categories. Obviously, it's not like 100% because there's a lot of tanks that kind of are a hybrid, you know. Orisa's a little bit rush, a little bit anchor, a little bit of an off tank, you know. Ramattra's a bit of an anchor tank, a bit of a rush tank. Honestly, I didn't even really want to have the rush tank category, but the problem is that, even though I can put Ramattra in there, Junker Queen doesn't fit anywhere except as a rush tank, so... Anyway, it's not super important. Either way. So, let's start straight away with Reinhardt. Now, already, I think I've got a mild heat take, which is not that Reinhardt is good against Mauga, but more that he's maybe not as bad as you think, in that I think he's D tier. And you might have thought he was F tier. And don't get me wrong, oh boy, it is not fun going against Mauga as Reinhardt. And I'll admit, I've only played this matchup a couple times, because, who stays Rein into Mauga? But here's the thing. Ultimately, there's going to be some recurring themes when it comes to us talking about these matchups. And one of the biggest ones is to memorize that Mauga, yes, essentially exists to delete you from the game if you're a tank. If you're a tank going into an enemy Mauga, it's literally just, oh, wow, so the enemy tank has simply decided, rather than play the game, he will select the character on the character select who does nothing for his team except delete me from the game. Right, cool, guess I'm not playing the game today. And obviously, yeah, that sucks. That's really awful to experience. But the thing is, you gotta realise that the way he deletes you from the game is the fact that obviously his guns do ludicrous damage if he's allowed to fire both of them simultaneously, which he can only do to big targets when he's close enough to them. And obviously as a tank you're a big target, and you're not effective at long range, so you've got to get close to him. Usually. It would seem like all this would screw Reinhardt, right? Because, he is a huge target to shoot, makes him really easy to melt, and he doesn't really have any ranged attacks except Fire Strike, which you can easily get out of the way of. So, yeah, surely Mauga should destroy Reinhardt. Well, he typically does, but here's the thing. There is one circumstance under which Reinhardt unironically becomes really good at countering Mauga, but there's a reason why it doesn't put him any higher than D. And that is, it entails you putting your full trust in your team and essentially having no say over whether the game is won yourself. Only hoping and crossing your fingers that the rest of your team does what they're supposed to, but if they do, Reinhardt can be really oppressive against Mauga. What is that? Well, as most of you know, but just for those of you out of the loop, Mauga is only so unkillable thanks to both his passive, where headshots grant him overhealth, and his cardiac overdrive giving him temporary lifesteal, meaning he heals for shooting you. Now, because he does such ludicrous damage, even though the lifesteal is only a percentage, it's still a ludicrous amount of healing, on top of damage resistance, on top of constant overhealth being gained, because even if you body shot, if it was with the right handgun while you're on fire, it still counts as a headshot. So Mauga's just constantly getting health just for shooting you. However, you gotta realise that the second Mauga doesn't get that health for shooting you, because for some reason he can't shoot you, the second that is the case, he's essentially as vulnerable as a Roadhog with no take-a-breather. He is just a big, fat, slow-moving target that's easy to shoot, standing in the open with no shields, no damage mitigation, just kinda sitting there asking to be blown up. And so this is the way that Reinhardt can be really oppressive against Mauga if he can trust his team to do their job. and that is if you just stand in front of the Mauga and hold shield. Unironically, just hold shield. Yes, he's going to break your shield, but it's going to take him fucking forever. And the whole time he's unloading all his bullets into your shield just to break through, he is also being shot by your DPS if they're doing their job from a safe distance where he can't do anything about that. And that means for every second he has to stand there, sitting still, just slowly whittling down your shield, his health bar is burning down, and his only way to get health back is completely cut off. So, if your DPS just focus him from a safe range and you hold up shield, you can melt Mauga. The only problem is, of course, your DPS have to do that. And obviously it's not super great in random games and quick play to be like, yes, I pray to the gods that my soldier will simply shoot the Mauga in front of my face. Oh, nope, the soldier's going for a flank on a Genji, and he's dead. Right, time to get out of here. And of course, when that happens, you are literally useless on Reinhardt. Basically, the only thing you can do is if you land a pin and land him in a horrible spot that it's hard for him to get out of, you will probably kill him if you cut him off from his supports, like, by the time you, pushed him into a new area with your pin. But that's extremely difficult, since he can just press overrun, and he'll be immune to pin. And again, overrun is like a 6-second cooldown. He gets it ludicrously often, so it's really difficult to do. But if you can do that, you can still win, even if your DPS don't do their job. But yeah, generally, essentially, there are two worlds here. The world in which your DPS actually do what you want and actually focus the Mauga while he can't shoot anyone because you're shielding off all his targets. Unironically, Rein is A-tier counter to Mauga in that situation. But the second that isn't the case, he's F-tier. So I put him at D tier in total. I was thinking C, but I'm going to go with D because I'm going to put a little bit of extra emphasis on this list on not even necessarily this is theoretically the best counter to the character if everyone does their job, but more this is the best counter you want to pick if you single-handedly, by simply being the better player, want to turn the game around. Because let's be real, you don't often trust your teammates, especially if you're losing. And so, you would rather be picking the characters you think you can carry on, rather than the characters which logically are the best counters, but actually it's only if my teammates do this and I don't trust them. So yeah, we're going to have a bit of a bias towards independence. If it weren't for that bias, I'd probably put him at C, but considering I'm putting a bias on independent tanks that can genuinely base purely off their own skills, still win against Mauga, I'm going to put him in D. Now, already here comes the first hot take here. Sigma. So I fully understand the logic to Sigma being the Mauga counter, and I don't even necessarily argue too much with people who say it, because I do understand their logic, and I think depending on the situation it can absolutely be correct. If you're in a situation where, once again, like with Reinhardt, you trust your DPS to be firing on the Mauga while you're just siphoning away all his damage, he just gets no lifesteal. You put up shield, he finally breaks shield, he has to stop to reload, and then when he finally finishes reloading, he starts shooting again and you just grasp, and then he waits for the grasp to end, and he thinks he can shoot you now, but now you just rock him, and then once he's out the stun of the rock, you just put up another shield, and then he breaks the shield, but he runs out of ammo, so he's got to reload again, and then once he's finished reloading, you've got grasp again, and you can just infinitely cut off all his healing by not letting him land any shots. Especially if, quick tip, this might sound obvious, but I don't see a lot of people doing this, you should often wait until you're on fire before you, cut off Mauga's damage, because obviously you're not really too scared of his bullets until you're on fire. And so if you can wait until he sets you on fire and then prevent him from getting any value from setting you on fire, that's pretty good. The damage over time from being on fire barely matters, but what does matter is the fact that his right hand gun just always headshots on you no matter where it hits if you're on fire. That matters a lot more. So denying him that value when he keeps setting you on fire is really, really good in my opinion. So yeah, the logic behind Sigma being the Mauga counter is pretty sound. Yeah, you can do slow but steady damage to him constantly from a relatively safe range. Yep, you can constantly cut off his lifesteal and his damage output so he can't just melt you. Yeah, you might still be a big target because you're a tank, but you're not as big as a lot of the other tanks, so it's not quite as easy for Mauga to just farm you if he gets close. And obviously Sigma is usually run in poke with long-range DPS, and they're very good against Mauga too, because they can just sit somewhere where the Mauga can't reach them, and just do free damage to him. He doesn't have any shields to stop that, he doesn't have any damage mitigation abilities, he's just got to sit there and take the bullets to the face from the soldier 50 miles away. So saying all this, your average person would probably put Sigma here. But I'm going to be a little bit spicy. I'm going to put Sigma in B. And I want to make it clear, I don't really think he's bad to pick against Mauga. I mean, I put him in B. But here's ultimately the thing. I think you still rely a little bit too much on your team to do your job if you pick Sigma. I'm not going to lie. time to confess, I've actually been playing a lot of Mauga recently, because I consistently feel like he's been underrated. And I know you're probably, like, thinking, what the fuck, isn't everyone saying he's broken? But, like, I more meant during Season 8 mid-season and early Season 9. Early Season 9, a lot of people, like, dismissed him, thinking he would be dead like Roadhog is, since they're often compared to each other, when I actually thought he was pretty oppressive in Season 9 and people weren't giving him enough credit. And already in mid-Season 8, when they nerfed Mauga, people acted like he was dead when he was still extremely oppressive. And so it's just one of those things where I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I'm just that guy. When there's a game that's like competitive and there's something that I think is obviously still overpowered, but everyone pretends like it's not, even if I think it's like cancer, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of play it to prove it to myself as like a sanity check. Like, I'm not insane, right? This is overpowered. And then I'll play it and be like, yeah, this is overpowered. Maybe I just need to play more games. Nope, this is overpowered. So I've been playing a lot of games as Mauga recently, and I'm not gonna lie, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy when I see a Sigma, but I'm not scared either. When I see a Sigma, honestly, it's kind of like, meh, okay. You know, I don't think to be myself, fuck, they counterpicked me. God damn it, I don't want to play against Sigma. I just think, oh, okay, right, Sigma. And I'm not going to lie, like, essentially, I feel like if the DPS and the supports are doing their job and really making it hard for you while you're you're getting shot by other people while you're fighting the Sigma, if that is the case, then yeah, Sigma's amazing against him. But again, quick play, random people all over the place, they don't know what they're doing, they're just fucking off doing whatever, they're not playing coordinated. If that's the case, I'm not gonna lie, it feels like Sigma just slows you down. Like, you have to play slow against Sigma, otherwise you will get run over. And I will say this, if you get an extremely prolonged fight with Sigma, like, no joke, like, in my experience, like, this literally takes, like, 2 whole minutes if you're the Sigma fighting the Mauga. You do eventually bleed them out. Like, if neither of you have healing and it's a true 1v1, and you manage to go for, like, 2 whole minutes without anyone else getting involved, if the Sigma cycles their cooldowns effectively, they will eventually kill the Mauga. But here's the thing. That's a really fucking long time to kill a single person. What are the chances that at no point, like, there isn't a single support who shows up and even just gives the Mauga a little healing? And if Mauga has any healing, he doesn't even need a lot, just a teensy bit of healing, even that means I think that Sigma instantly loses that matchup. Like, even if the Sigma gets healing too, the Sigma doesn't get as much out of his healing as the Mauga does. So even if it's just one support on each side with a Mauga and a Sigma, I think the Mauga wins. But if it's truly 1 versus 1, no one else gets involved, I think the Sigma wins, it just takes ages. But because it takes ages, it makes it like a near 0% chance that a support doesn't eventually show up and bail the Mauga out. So, you know, like... Anyway, so yeah, essentially, I think that Sigma is a fine counter against Mauga, and probably literally the best counter if you're running the perfect team to counter Mauga and everyone's acting accordingly. If you're running like, what would be the perfect team to counter Mauga? I think, yes, theoretically I would agree, the absolute pinnacle of Mauga countering would probably be Sigma as the tank, Anazen as the supports, and then like DPS would be like, I don't know, Sojourn, Soldier, and you just sit on high ground and just stare down a choke and just... Brrr, and like what does the Mauga do? Like, he tries to walk up to your high ground and you just fucking anti him, discord him, rail him in the head, rock him, and if he tries to shoot back you just shield it off. Like, obviously that is gonna be like, wow, Mauga can't even play the game. But like, again, we're talking about random lobbies where people are picking whatever the hell they want. And considering that is the case, let's be fucking real, they're not picking that. They're going to pick whatever they want to play. You're gonna have like Moira Mercy, Junkrat, like Genji, I don't know. And if that's the case, I don't think Sigma's gonna help you there, buddy. So essentially that's why I put him here. Again, if we're talking about like, oh yes, let's theory craft the best possible Mauga counter, I agree, S tier. But again, like, we're talking, you're playing with randoms, you have no idea what people are picking, people aren't going to swap to what they should for you, you just got to play with the hand you're dealt, and you've got to do as much as you can based on your own steam instead of having to rely on your team. If that's the case, I think Sigma's just okay. He slows Mauga down, but unless he manages to get into an extremely long fight with Mauga, in which the Mauga gets no heals, Sigma does not usually win in the long run. Now, Junker Queen is always a very, very interesting one when it comes to tank matchups, and one that I think in a lot of matchups is misjudged. For example, I see a lot of people use Zarya as the counter to Junker Queen, and I think Zarya's okay against Junker Queen, but I'm not gonna lie, I think Junker Queen has a decent matchup against Zarya. I feel like that's basically a 50-50. And I mean, it's one of those things where I don't actually play that much Junker Queen. Like, I play, like, I would say she's somewhere in the middle. I don't actually know off the top of my head, but if I had to guess, I would say she's somewhere in the middle in terms of the spread of my playtime of tanks. But she is actually my highest win rate tank. I win 63% of my games on Junker Queen. I'm honestly a little bit surprised by that. Like, I don't think I'm a bad Junker Queen, but I think there's other tanks I'm better at, which the win rate isn't quite as high. But yeah, either way, I've got a very high win rate on Junker Queen across my many hours of playtime. And I think that there are some matchups that are really misjudged, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's a bit of a parallel here. Of course, we keep bringing up the whole Mauga Roadhog comparison. One thing that's a common misunderstanding is a lot of people think that Roadhog is also a Junker Queen counter. And actually, I disagree with that too. In fact, if you didn't know, I'm pretty sure most people who are good at Hog consider Junker Queen to be a slightly negative matchup for you. As in, it's completely fair, like, it's not like you're getting screwed, but, like, you are less likely to win if they're on Junker Queen by a small margin. And that's essentially just because, like, it's so hard to get good shots on Junker Queen, and even if you hook her, like, you just shouts and runs away and almost always lives. Whereas Junker Queen gets, like, free shots on you from a safer distance where your shotgun doesn't do max damage, and she also can land free knives on you and sometimes pull you out of cover and get you to insta-die if you get antied or something. Not to mention the obvious, even though this isn't the big reason why. Obviously, her ult also anti-heals Roadhog, and anti-heal is really good against Roadhog. But that's not, like, the big reason. The big reason is mostly that, yeah, Junker Queen could just farm Roadhog from medium range when Roadhog needs her to get even closer than that to do good damage. And because Junker Queen is the one with the better mobility, and Junker Queen is the one with knife, Junker Queen gets to decide when you're allowed to get close and when you're not. You don't really get to pick when the Junker Queen comes close. And again, even if you land a hook on her, you can't one-shot her. You can maybe take half her health in one shot, but then she just presses shout, gets a bunch of health, runs away. And you can't even, like, predict the movement of her shout, because it's like, it's actually based on your keyboard movements, of course. That sounds like a really small distinction, but think about it. Isn't it, like, way easier to hit a Mercy compared to a Kiriko? And that's kind of weird, isn't it? Because Mercy's Guardian Angel moves a lot faster than Kiriko just 80-80 strafing. But Guardian Angel actually has a predictable arc to it, so you know where it's going to go. A Kiriko randomly 80-80 strafing, there is no prediction to be done there. They are just mashing keys and you've got to pray you guess the right key they press. Similar thing here with Junker Queen, where it's a lot harder to land hooks on her or catch up with her when she starts using Shout to run away, because Shout just lets her move faster. It doesn't force her into a certain movement trajectory like a lot of other movement abilities. Like a Winston Leap, you can predict where the Winston's going to land. Whereas a Junker Queen Shout, you might think, okay, she's going to shout and try and run out that door, but you don't know if before she goes up to the doorway, she does a little left, right, dodges the hook, and then walks in, you know. Because of that, it's a lot harder to land hooks. Anyway, yeah, you get the point. Similar kind of matchup with Junker Queen, I think, into Mauga. I actually think Junker Queen is an underrated tank into Mauga. In fact, man, I must admit, I haven't played this matchup all too much, because I played a lot of Junker Queen in Season 7 and Season 8. So I was a little bit burnt out on her recently, so I haven't played her that much. But, you know, I think I'm actually going to put her in A. I think I'm actually going to do it. Here's the thing. It's a bit of a weird one. Essentially, similarly to Roadhog, the reason why this is good for you is because Mauga's really easy to hit with knife. You can often kill Mauga by pulling him out of cover. Like, if he gets antied and he runs into cover, if you can pull him back out of cover with the knife, that's often a death sentence for him. At medium range, you farm him, whereas at close range, he farms you, but you're faster than him, so you get to decide when he's at medium range and when you're at close range. You know, he doesn't get to decide that. And of course, your ult is, just like with Roadhog, very effective against Mauga. So yeah, but one thing that's hugely overlooked, again, it's one of those things where, like, it's so much more impactful than you think. Just the fact that Junker Queen is the smallest hitbox tank in the game is enormous. Because the thing is, when you play Mauga into Junker Queen, I've only played it a couple times, but I'll tell you this, it is frustrating as the Mauga. Because the Junker Queen basically has to be breathing down your neck for you to actually be able to use both guns without the shots just spreading around. Because, like, you know, especially because she's mostly tall rather than wide, a lot of the times, even if you do line up your shots correctly, there's just a large chance that the cone of spread, like, scatters the bullets too far to the left or right, even if where you're aiming is literally center of mass, and even if they are relatively close. They've really got to be breathing down your neck right on your face for you to be able to just hold down both guns and watch her melt. And again, any smart Junker Queen won't let you do that. Any smart Junker Queen will constantly force you to play at medium range where she's the one in control, and if you ever try and close the distance, she just shouts and runs away, or if you ever try and run away, she just knifes and pulls you back in. And as I say, that whole time while you're building up to ults, when you cage fight Junker Queen, don't get me wrong, you're still favoured, but like it's not as huge as it is against most other tanks. Whereas when Junker Queen, ults you, you're dead. So I actually think Junker Queen's kind of underrated against Mauga. I never hear anyone talking about Junker Queen being good against Mauga, but it could just be because this is clearly a matchup where like it's a big skill thing. It's definitely not like your average random who's never played Junker Queen is going to swap Junker Queen and shit on a Mauga just because Junker Queen's that good at countering Mauga. But if you can play Junker Queen, I think it's the swap. Not the swap, but like, if any of the other ones that are going to be an A or S tier for the rest of this video are tanks you can't play, then I think Junker Queen would be your next best bet. Alright, Ramattra. Man, I am about to unleash some fucking blasphemy. Nah, I won't put him above Sigma, but like, man, that is a bit too spicy. Oh yeah, by the way, I said earlier that I was going to mention popular opinions, but I didn't mention the popular opinion for Junker Queen. The main reason for that is just I have not heard any opinion on the Junker Queen Mauga matchup. Like again, I'm assuming that's because most people just never even think to try Junker Queen against Mauga because they just assume it's going to end badly. But like I can only assume that. I don't hear anything about people's opinions about Junker Queen into Mauga, so it's not like I'm hiding the popular opinion there. I just don't think there is a popular opinion in there really. But either way, Ramattra is a weird one, man. Because, like, it seems like Ramattra should get absolutely shat on by Mauga. He is a huge target to shoot. He's got loads of health for you to farm to get your cage fight. And, how is Ramattra going to kill Mauga when Mauga's DPS is so much higher than his, and Ramattra's DPS is just so slow and gradual? Well, here's the thing. I think that essentially you have to practically relearn how to play Ramattra to play this matchup correctly. I genuinely think that Mauga is probably the matchup that forces you to relearn how to play harder than any other matchup from Ramattra. But I'm not gonna lie, I've had a decent amount of success against Mauga as Ramattra. You just have to play very differently. Because usually as Ramattra, Nemesis form is your survival cooldown for the most part. Obviously Shield also does that too, but Shield for the most part is just used to take some nice angles or protect your team or maybe block off some healing from a tank, the enemy tank. But generally you don't use it just for survivability. Obviously you do sometimes, but like a lot of the times Nemesis form has that covered, especially with block, especially if you have good heals. Obviously, in this situation, Nemesis form isn't going to help you. If anything, it's going to hurt you because you're going to be easier to farm in Nemesis form. Not that you should literally never use it, but you should use it way more sparingly in this matchup. You should essentially, pop it, go for literally, 1-2 punches, and run. And if you need to, cancel it early to make yourself harder to shoot, and so you can get your shield back sooner. And that is really weird, because against literally every other tank in the game, Nemesis form is your main way of staying alive. In this matchup, Shield instead becomes your main way of staying alive. Once again, same as Reinhardt, same as Sigma. When you put down that shield and you hide behind it, Ramattra is not getting any heals. But here's the thing. Ramattra not only has the shield, but he also has his Void Accelerator. His staff actually is really good against Mauga. A lot of people haven't been mentioning this, but because Mauga's such an enormous target, it is easy to constantly spam him at a long range with those little nanobots. And on top of that, because they're so long range, the Mauga can't really do shit back to you so long as you keep your distance. And again, the fact he's so big means the travel time doesn't matter so much. He can't get out of the way in time. He's too big and too slow. So you can kind of just hold it on him, and you're just constantly getting free damage on him. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not going to kill him often just by doing that, but you will deny space from him. You will make it so that he can't walk down certain corridors, because if he did, he would die. Or you can make it so certain areas of the map are just locked off to him by just standing at a safe distance and holding down that Void Accelerator. Not to mention that even if you can't kill him, even if he's getting healed, even if he's using Cardiac Overdrive, even if he's just sitting there tanking all the nanobots, at the end of the day, he's not getting ult charge for shooting you, and you're getting ult charge for shooting him. And Annihilation is a pretty fucking good ultimate. So ultimately, I think that the Ramattra matchup is hard, but unironically, Ramattra's actually not that bad against Mauga. You just gotta learn to play him in a different way, where instead Shield is your main defensive cooldown, and Nemesis form is, in a weird way, almost your burst movement option, where, if you see a quick opportunity to, quickly close out a kill and get out, you use it, just so you can get, you see someone low, and they're just a little bit too far to reach, you pop Nemesis form, run at them, one punch, block, get out. That's That's usually how I've used it in the matchup, and it's actually gone pretty well. Really, the only thing that really sucks about this matchup is that when you do use Annihilation, it is a really powerful ultimate, but you do kind of put yourself in a situation where it's really hard to use it effectively, because if you run into the enemy team with Annihilation, you let the Mauga farm you, and you can't really prevent that except by just not using your ult when it's extremely valuable and you can't afford to not use it. Best advice there is either don't be as greedy with it if you can help it, like accept getting maybe just 1 or 2 kills with it rather than having to get a whole team wipe with it. If it means that using it on just those 1 or 2 people doesn't mean you have to get into the Mauga's face. Or I would say if you're going to use it and you are going to be greedy and you're just going to run into the enemy team, make sure to drop a shield before you activate your ultimate so that there's already a shield down while you're using Annihilation. Lastly, Ravenous Vortex is an ability that, don't get me wrong, is clearly the weakest ability in his kit, but I also think it's simultaneously quite overlooked. It's one of those things where because people don't care about it and it's clearly the weakest ability, a lot of people act like it doesn't do anything, and that means people fall for it way more often than they should. Basically what I'm getting at is, if you ever see a Mauga use Overrun and you have the ability to, throw a Ravenous Vortex at where he's going to be forced to stop, and when he stops on that spot, he's going to be stuck there a while. He doesn't have his Overrun to get out, and the slow is going to be really devastating to him. So if he's still not behind cover, and he's lost his Overrun, and he's getting slowed by Ravenous Vortex, if at any moment there he gets hit with a Discord Orb, with an Anti-Nade, with a Sleep Dart, or just generally a bunch of burst damage, holy shit, he is just dead. He is just dead. Now, again, it's one of those things where, yeah, I say that and that sounds really good, but in fairness, that requires the Mauga to use Overrun, you be able to predict where he's going to land, and then on top of that, for his Overrun to not end behind cover. And obviously, usually he's going to end it behind cover if he's doing it correctly. But obviously, every now and then, Maugas fuck up, or they just have to defend a point on the map where there's just not enough cover to work with. And if that's the case, then yeah, Ravenous Vortex can be a quick way to just call him out. So yeah, essentially, you want to play very scared and sneaky when you play Ramattra into a Mauga. You want to play as far away as possible for as long as possible, and when you get close, you want to pop Nemesis form, go for 1 quick kill, and run for your life and get out a lot of the time. You don't want to stay in long, prolonged, up-close team fights like you usually do with Ramattra in this matchup. It's a really weird one, but it is one where you have a really good chance of turning things around if you're simply good at Ramattra. Now, Mauga is not a mistake. He is actually being included in this tier list. At A tier. Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but I mean, it's just kind of true. Mauga's so OP that he even counters himself. No, but seriously, I don't know, it's not like, oh yes, I picked Mauga against another Mauga, now we win. No, but okay, obviously you'd expect that if you're picking Mauga into another Mauga, it should be negative, because not only are you both running the same thing, so neither of you had advantage, but presumably that guy's a Mauga player and you're not, which means that guy should be better than you. And that can be true. But here is my counter-argument. Mauga is an extremely low-skill tank, and I would argue, probably the lowest skill tank the game has seen. I don't know, Zarya and Orisa are pretty fierce competition, but as a result, honestly, there is probably not that much of a difference between, your average player who just, swaps to Mauga because they feel like they have to, and, extremely, yes, I am a Mauga main kind of people. I don't know if those people exist, but if they do, generally the Mauga mirror is very similar to the Orisa mirror, in which basically there is only one piece of advice you have to follow. Now, obviously, in reality, there's a teensy bit more nuance in this, but I'm not going to lie, literally 90% of winning both the Orisa mirror and the Mauga mirror is the same thing. And that is, you are in a reverse race to see who you can press their buttons the slowest. If you just simply edge your buttons as hard as possible, if you just simply make sure to press Overrun at the last possible second, make sure to press a Cardiac Overdrive at the last possible second all the time, and you don't get trigger happy and you don't just running guns a-blazing and pop all your abilities and get caught without them, you will win basically every time unless you do something really stupid. At the end of the day, this sounds really simple, but genuinely, just this alone, gives you so much of the picture. Enemy Mauga runs in with Overrun, and then you're also Mauga, and you see him, and you start shooting him, and he panics, he's like, oh shit, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna pop Cardiac Overdrive, and he starts healing off of you, and for a while, he's actually maybe winning the fight, but then his Cardiac Overdrive runs out. Now you pop cardiac overdrive. And he starts running away. So you use overrun and chase him. And then he dies. I mean, what's he supposed to do? He can't do anything there. And what was the difference? He pressed his buttons first. Genuinely, this is how a lot of the matchup works. It's just this. It's whoever presses their buttons first loses. So long as you keep that in mind, and you make sure to always press your buttons as late as you can physically manage, then you should have the upper hand in the matchup. Though unfortunately there is one other thing that means that it's certainly not the S tier pick. And that is, unfortunately, it is true that for the most part the matchup is also just pray you have the better supports. At the end of the day, if the enemy team simply has better supports, it doesn't matter if you're the better Mauga, you're probably still going to lose that matchup. As well as that, of course, it's not even just being better at the game, but also just what supports they pick. I mean, once again, if your supports are Moira Mercy and their supports are Ana Zen, you're going to lose, even if your Moira Mercy are like extremely experienced one-tricks and their Ana Zen are just randoms. So yeah, essentially, I kind of debate sometimes to myself whether Mauga deserves to be this high on the list. Because in fairness, I did do the whole, like, independent thing where, like, yeah, if you want to do it purely based off your own skill, then really you should be playing other characters. But I can't lie, it is just so much less stressful and so much easier to just swap Mauga into Mauga. It is a lot easier, and unless you really don't trust your supports, it does feel like by just holding your buttons and not positioning stupid, you often do win. I don't know, like, man, this feels like a really dumb argument, but it really does feel like a lot of Maugas get really trigger happy, so it's not even a thing of skill. If you just can play patient and they can't, it's just so easy to flip the game off of that. So, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about this, and maybe I'm saying this out loud, and maybe I've just been playing against a lot of bad Maugas, because obviously if anyone plays Mauga regularly, 90% chance they're a crutch, and, you know, they're not necessarily super good at the game. And so as a result, like, it makes sense that if you swap Mauga, even if you play him less, you would be more likely to win, because you actually are decent at the game. God damn it, this sounds so backhanded, but come on, like, you know Mauga deserves it. You know Mauga deserves it, man. So yeah, I think I'll stick with that. Alright, Orisa. Orisa's a really interesting one because before the mid-season in Season 8, a lot of people were still picking Orisa into Mauga, even though I genuinely thought Orisa was like E tier, like nearly F. I basically thought, okay, so Orisa used to be awful because of two things. When Mauga first dropped, before the mid-season patch in Season 8, there were two things that made the Orisa-Mauga matchup basically unwinnable for Orisa. One of those things was that Orisa didn't yet get the buff where she no longer had any damage fall off on her weapon. And because she didn't have that buff, that meant that she had to get close to do good damage to Mauga, but if she got close, she just lets the Mauga farm her and she dies. The second reason why she was awful back then is because of the fact that it used to be the case that Mauga could headshot you while you were using Fortify by setting you on fire. That not only meant that Fortify did less to reduce the damage you were taking, but on top of that, it meant that Mauga was also constantly getting overhealth for shooting you while you were using Fortify, on top of the lifesteal if he was using Cardiac Overdrive. And this really was a truly unwinnable matchup, because while you might say, well, like, surely it can't be the worst matchup in the world, because, like, try and imagine in your head, if you're trying to fight a Mauga, at least you'd probably rather be Orisa than Winston, right? Because, like, what's Winston going to do? Tickle him with his Tesla cannon? At least Orisa can do some damage. You might think that, but that's actually not correct. Like, yeah, in a 1v1, that's true, but if you're playing someone like Winston, you're not going to get close to Mauga, so you don't have to worry about that. You're going to constantly avoid him. You're going to constantly focus his backline. You're going to get value elseways. The problem is that thanks to Orisa's poor mobility, she's forced to fight Mauga. The only thing she can do is frontline, and she frontlines, she's standing in front of Mauga. So she has to take the fight, and she's guaranteed to lose the fight, basically. The only thing that Orisa has over Mauga, for the most part, is that her CC is better, because Mauga's Stomp is a really hard-to-use CC that isn't really very helpful, whereas obviously Spear is really, really good, and Javelin Spin can occasionally be helpful to push people into nasty positions. Unless that CC makes the difference, which it usually doesn't, but it's not impossible, then generally Orisa basically always loses that matchup, because Orisa has a much worse ultimate, doesn't do as much damage, isn't isn't as survivable as Mauga is, at least, you know, a Mauga farming an Orisa is. Basically, loses on every part. Mauga's also got more mobility, so Orisa can't chase Mauga if he runs away and he's low, but Mauga can chase Orisa. So, yeah, you're essentially choosing, we're both going to be stat sticks that just sit here and shoot each other, but you have more stats, and you also have more mobility, and you also have a better ultimate, and the only thing that I have is a little bit of CC. Yeah, garbage matchup, and yet people would still run Orisa into Mauga. It drove me mad. But either way, that all changed recently. Because the mid-season not only made it so that Fortify now does prevent Mauga from headshotting you even if you're on fire, which not only means that Fortify is actually good at keeping you alive against Mauga now, but also means he no longer gets overhealth for shooting you while you're fortified, which means you're denying even more of his self-heal. But on top of that, they also gave her the buff I mentioned before, where she now has no damage fall off on her weapon, which finally means that she can take the fight against Mauga at long or medium range, and she does not do bad damage against her. She does some good damage. That combined with the CC means that, honestly, I think that Orisa's a decent choice against Mauga now, honestly. Probably better than Ramattra. Honestly, probably better than... I think that Orisa is essentially... Orisa only doesn't work if you don't trust your supports to do their job, because you do need a lot of healing. But if you get that lot of healing, then, like... Yeah, I think that Orisa, just with those two changes, went from a garbage matchup against, like, Mauga, like, actually one of the most unwinnable tank matchups in history, to actually an amazing matchup. Because, not to mention, both Javelin Spin and Fortify are mitigating damage, and that means that Mauga is not only not getting overhealth from headshotting you, but also not even getting healing from Cardiac Overdrive because he's doing less damage, so that's less lifesteal as well. So you're taking away Mauga's survivability while also doing huge damage to him, while also having better range than him, so long as you stay at a distance, you can just farm him and he can't do much back to you, while also having CC, so if he comes close, you can force him to get back, which means that once again, even if he runs in and gets in your face and says, fuck you, we're fighting up close, I'm gonna melt you, you can just spin him into the distance and spear him over the edge and just say, no, we're not fighting. No, you stay over there. You just stay over there 5 miles away where I can just farm you and you can't do shit to me. I'll quite happily sit here. So, honestly, yeah. I must admit, I kind of like this matchup because I don't like Orisa that much, as I mentioned before. But I still maintain that at the very least, while they're both low-skill tanks, I still feel like Orisa takes more skill than Mauga. The thing is with Orisa, there are things Orisa can do that take skill. The main problem is that usually the things that are far more impactful are the things that are brainless, and the things that take skill are only small optimizations that don't really change much a lot of the time. Whereas with Mauga, it's not even like you have the option to do something crazy skillful most of the time. It really is just the skill ceiling of the character is simply very low. So either way, and I kind of like the Orisa Mauga matchup as much as I hate both of those tanks. I kind of like playing Orisa into Mauga because it feels like the only time it actually matters, like, that you have to play Orisa well. Because a lot of the time as Orisa you are just Wing and, like, praying your supports heals you and holding down left click and mashing buttons to not die. But honestly, in this matchup, because of the fact that you only have the upper hand at long range, it does turn into a little bit more of a strategic matchup, where it's more about, like, considering the angles that Mauga is going to approach from, considering how you can continue to deny space so he doesn't get an opportunity to close the distance and screw you over. You have to be really careful with your cooldown usage, because you get caught without, like, damage reduction. It's not just that you're going to die if you don't get healed, but even if you do get healed, you're going to let the Mauga farm you, get more cage fights, and also lifesteal himself to self-heal. So, like, you really gotta be careful about cycling your cooldowns. I actually unironically enjoy playing Orisa into Mauga. It's just not other matchups for Orisa typically. I don't usually like playing Orisa then. So yeah, Roadhog. Oh god. Roadhog into Mauga. This is a tough one, man. It always goes one way very hard. Either the Mauga shits on the Roadhog, or the Roadhog shits on the Mauga. It never goes any other way. Nah, that's too generous. I'm gonna go D. Oh, man. Okay, it's so feast or famine, it's really hard. Okay, obviously, Hog is F on average. But here's the thing. Hook can put Mauga into a death trap that he can't easily escape from, especially if his overrun is on cooldown. If you land a hook on a Mauga, pull him into somewhere his supports can't see him, and on top of that, put him in a pig pen, and he does not have overrun, That's like instant death to a Mauga. Even if you're Roadhog, he's probably dead there. The thing is, that is obviously not only pretty hard to do, but the whole time, if you peek the Mauga for longer than 1 second, you die. You are so easy for Mauga to farm, and there's so little you can do about him. But if you just land that one hook, you can just delete him instantly. But it needs to be a good hook, it needs to be quick, it needs to put him in the perfect place. And I think the biggest problem is that, like, I want to say this is just a skill diff. I want to say just get good and this is a good matchup for Roadhog. Because it kind of feels like that's true sometimes. But I think I can't say it because of one small thing. I would say this is actually, like, maybe even an even matchup, and it's just whoever's the better player actually wins. It just feels oppressive to the Roadhog because they have to do so much to, like, win, but, like, ultimately it's pretty fair. I would usually say that, but the main problem is I feel like you have to blind hook. Because as I mentioned, if you peek for even long enough to see where the Mauga is, then, like, you're already dead. You're already dead at that point. And, like, if you could land that one sneaky hook the Mauga doesn't see coming and pull him into a death trap, again, you win. But the main problem is, to land that sneaky hook, you have to actually know where the Mauga is. But to know where the Mauga is, you have to look at them. But if you look at them, he kills you. So, yeah. It's like, so I feel like you have to guess where they are. And obviously you can use sound and you can, memorize map layout and, like, think, right, well, okay, logically, if I'm the Mauga right here and I'm in this area and there's this doorway here, I would probably walk into this direction, which means in a couple seconds he's going to be right here. Okay, I haven't even seen the Mauga once in the last minute, but I'm pretty sure if I just jump out this doorway, throw out a blind hook, I'm going to catch it, yes, and then pull him into the pig pen. And I have done that a couple times, and obviously it feels really good, and it really puts it in your head that, like, yeah, this is just a skill-based matchup. I just have to get good at it, and then it's a good matchup. But I'm not going to lie, I think that it was one of those things, again, where it's an element of skill and an element of luck, and that element of luck screws you over. Because sometimes you'll just spend the whole game looking for blind hooks on the Mauga to finally get him out of the way, and he will just you'll just never guess right. You might get close a bunch of times, you might have the right idea of the general area he'd be in, but you might just get unlucky. He might just be a little bit to the left, he might just be a little bit to the right, and, like, you can't, like, wait and, like, line up a better hook. You can't afford to do that. You just die if you do that, especially now Season 9's come in. I must admit, I mostly played this matchup back in Season 8. I've just realised it's going to be even worse now that you got the DPS passive on you in Season 9 as well. Like, you're just going to be dead. So, yeah, I think that while this is where I'd like to put Roadhog, because, like, part of me really wants to say, oh, it's just a skill-based matchup, just get good. I think the fact that you're basically always forced to rely on blind hooks, even though all you need is that one good hook and a burst kill on him before he can get, like, bailed out, and you win. Considering that, I think I've got to put him at D. Yeah. Alright, Zarya. Zarya is, I actually think, better than Sigma against Mauga. I know that both Zarya and Sigma are touted as, like, good Mauga counters. I don't know, I guess the reason why I think Zarya is better is more just because Zarya is more active. She takes a more active role in stopping him. Sigma's more just like, I'm going to stop him from being able to do damage, but I'm not actually going to kill him. Whereas Zarya's like, I'm going to stop him from doing damage and kill him. Now, in fairness, Zarya is a bit more risky because, of course, you're playing a zero mobility tank that only gets brief windows of being invulnerable with Bubble, and on top of that, they have, like, no utility, mobility. It's just, yeah, all they got is Bubble and nothing else. Bubble and Beam. And that really does hurt. Obviously, with Sigma, it's a lot more versatile. You got your shield, you got your rock for the stun, you've got your grasp. You can do a lot more as Sigma, like, whereas as Zarya, you're just frontlining. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to deal with Mauga's shit, honestly, just running at Mauga with Zarya, I must admit, this is probably one that I'm the least experienced in, because I don't make it a secret that Zarya is my least played tank. Well, I say least played, obviously technically Mauga is because he's the newest, but, like, if we're scaling by how long they've been in the game, Zarya's my least played tank. I just think she's so boring. I think she's the fun police. I still have a decent amount of playtime in her, because unfortunately there's a lot of situations where you kind of have to play her. But, yeah, I'm not going to lie, I never play Zarya by choice. I don't remember the last time. I don't think in the last year I have ever joined a game of Overwatch and thought, yes, today I will play Zarya, and willingly selected her. Almost always it's I walk in and it's like, oh wow, my DPS, my supports, they're just dead on cooldown. Like, I'm fine at staying alive, but everyone else is just falling over like a stack of dominoes. So I guess I'm just going to have to go Zarya and bubble them and then beam this Orisa. So yeah, I won't lie, this is probably one of the matchups I can speak the least on, but from what little I've played of it and played against it, it really does feel like the Zarya, this is like the only time that someone can challenge Mauga face to face. The fact that the Zarya is both one of the smaller tanks in the game, so it's hard for her to get farmed unless the Mauga gets like really breathing down her neck, combined with the fact that, as usual, bubbles of course negate his damage, which negates his overhealth and negates his self-heal and all that. I don't know, it just feels like a lot of the time you're forced to constantly slowly back up if you're fighting a Zarya as Mauga. Like, it's not like Zarya just walks in there and blows your head off. No, of course not. But a lot of the times it feels like Zarya walks in and you start shooting her and she gets set on fire and she just bubbles and it cleanses the fire. And it's like, right, okay, can't shoot her for a bit. Oh, she's walking in. Okay, I'm going to step back a bit. And it's like, alright, now I'm going to shoot her again. Oh, set her on fire. And there goes another bubble. Okay, right, so the fire's gone again. Oh, man, I'm actually starting to lose quite a bit of health. Let me just pop Cardiac Overdrive. Okay, right, now the bubble's gone. Time to get a bunch of lifesteal. Oh, wait, now the Zarya's walking back a little bit, so now I'm not getting any lifesteal because she's not close enough. Oh, well, that sucks, so I didn't even really get healed that much from my Cardiac Overdrive. And then, of course, once it wears out, she just starts running back forward at you again before you can take any space from her. And it's like, ah, shit, I might actually have to get out of here, and you start having to use Overrun just to get out, and it's like, wait, okay, so the Zarya's not killed me, but it kind of seems like I'm just slowly giving her more and more ground. And, like, you know, if I didn't do that, then she would just kill me. So that's kind of why I feel like Zarya is, like, pretty good against Mauga. It's not even just like, oh, she just runs in there and fucks everyone up and kills Mauga. It's more just like, she just denies Mauga all the tools that he uses to take and keep space. She just, like, says, no, this space is mine now. No, I'm not going to charge directly into you and just kill myself, but, like, you know, I'm in this spot, you're over there, you can't come near me. If you do, I'm just going to bubble and you're not going to get any lifesteal or anything. Okay, then I'm just going to walk forward very slowly and you're going to give me all that space. Lovely. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, considering that I think that Zarya ultimately wins the space game, even though the 1v1 between these two does tend to be pretty neutral and pretty long-winded, I think that the fact that Zarya just seems to slowly, constantly close out space against Mauga is what makes her good. In fairness, the Mauga does have one thing over Zarya, and that is that his overrun means that he actually has mobility, whereas Zarya doesn't. And if the Zarya does need to suddenly retreat, that could really screw you over. But, I don't know, man. I haven't seen that happen, personally. I haven't seen a game where, like, Mauga's overrun has just screwed Zarya because she can't get away. It just seems like always it's the Mauga running away from the Zarya rather than the Zarya running away from the Mauga. So, yeah. Oh boy, now is where it gets spicy. The dive tanks. So, you might notice there has not been a single S yet. Well, I'm not exactly the best at being subtle, so how about we just dive right into it? It was already kind of foreshadowed at the beginning. This is like a nuclear take, I understand. Okay, ask anyone and they will say that Doom is useless against Mauga. I'm not gonna lie, I disagree so much. I'm not gonna lie, I actually think that Doomfist is the only character I can see when I'm Mauga that makes me think, oh shit, I should probably swap. Doomfist is the only character that makes me go, oh god, I am not going to have fun this game if I'm playing Mauga. And similarly, if I'm going against a Mauga, it depends on the situation, but a lot of the time, especially if I don't trust my team, if I just feel like, okay, I just have to be the better player, and that's the only way we're going to win this, I'm usually going Doom. So let me explain. Why is it that people think that Doomfist is dogshit against Mauga in the first place? Well, it's pretty obvious. Well, it's mostly down to two things, I guess. The first one is very obvious, and that is that Doomfist does not kill very fast, and Mauga kills very fast. Doomfist also, by tank standards, doesn't have a whole lot of health, and Mauga has a whole lot of health. It's pretty simple. If Doomfist and Mauga get into a fight, Mauga's winning. That's simple. And that's true. I'm not saying that's not true. However, let's add a little bit more onto that. We already mentioned earlier, same goes for Winston, but it's not like Winston is going to be fighting Mauga up close. He's going to be constantly avoiding him and focusing his backline instead. Doomfist does the same thing, so that refutes the first point. But it doesn't refute the second point. And the second point is, if Mauga puts you in a cage with Cage Fight, and you're Doomfist, you're insta-dead. There is no living that. Unless your supports pull out, like, Suzu, Immortality Field, the Life Grip, they just hit all of their buttons just to bail you out. Unless that happens, you are not getting out of that cage alive. Because for those of you a bit out of the loop, when you get stuck in a cage fight by Mauga, you don't just get trapped inside the cage. You don't just get cut off from all your healing because the barrier surrounding you does block healing from your allies. But on top of all that, the chain that attaches to you disables all of your movement abilities until the cage is broken or runs out of time. All of them. That means no Meteor Strike, no Seismic Slam, and no Punch. You are supposed to 1v1 a Mauga at point blank range with nothing but primary fire and block as Doomfist if you get caught in a cage fight. That's just... yeah. Yep. And it's pretty similar for every other dive tank. It's basically a free kill on Winston. It's basically a free kill on Wrecking Ball. Not quite so much on D.Va, but even D.Va is probably not getting out of there alive. So yeah, that sucks, doesn't it? Wow. So yeah, it seems like Doomfist is like pretty shit against Mauga, right? Why is he in S tier? Okay, so I want to make it clear that this is the matchup I have played by far the most. Ever since I finally got the hang of Doomfist in Season 8 and went from having mixed results with him to finally actually doing consistently well with him, I have been playing him non-stop. And considering that first happened in Season 8, I have played the Doomfist-Mauga matchup a lot, and I am convinced it is simply difficult, but at the end of the day, it is the matchup where you have the most potential to simply skill diff the Mauga and make the game impossible for him to win if you simply are the better player. And so don't get me wrong, I fully acknowledge that the average player who doesn't learn how to play Doom and isn't crazy on Doom or whatever, I understand that your average player that doesn't fucking get quaked on or whatever, probably if they pick Doom and they don't play Doom, they pick him, they feed, Mauga destroys them, and they'll be like, what the fuck, I thought he was S tier against Mauga. And I'll make it clear, yeah, if you don't know how to play Doom, then yeah, I don't know, unless you want to try learning, I wouldn't exactly recommend this as your first go-to counter to Mauga. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I am really focusing on this list on solo carry potential against Mauga. Because again, I think that's what mostly emotionally resonates with people. Honestly, genuinely, probably even more than hard win-loss rates, people more care about that feeling that the reason they lost a game was simply because someone picked a character on the character select, and that your skill had no say in the matter. That no matter how good you are at the game, you simply could not have turned this game around because they are on that character and you are on this character. Because that's really what I'm focusing on getting at here. Because that's really what I'm trying to tap into. That feeling that, trying to beat that feeling like there's just nothing you can do against Mauga. And trying to show people how you can do something against Mauga, even if it's not necessarily fair, or it is absolutely a very uphill battle. I think that Doomfist is the pinnacle of that. So okay, how could this matchup possibly be good for Doom? Well, as I already mentioned, similar to Winston and Ball and D.Va, kind of, you don't actually fight the Mauga. You don't want to. You don't want to see that fucking guy. He will just destroy you. So instead, you focus his supports. And here's the thing. This is one of the very few things that gets overlooked about Mauga. How the fuck does a Mauga bail out his supports if they're in trouble? Like, a Sigma gives them a shield. An Orisa can't do that much, but at least she can spear the person who's, after them. A Zarya gives you a bubble. A Junker Queen maybe gives you health with Shout. Hell, even a Roadhog could hook the threat and kill them for it, or at least pull them away from you. But what does Mauga do if one of his supports behind him gets jumped and is about to die? What's the answer there? He can't shield them, he can't interrupt you or CC you, and he can't do any form of damage mitigation to anyone except himself. So, they're just dead. He just has to watch them die. The only thing he could do is he could use Overrun to run back towards them, but not only would they probably die before he arrived, but even once he arrived, he can only do damage to you. He can't stun you, he can't stop you from doing your job unless he perfectly lands his stomp on you, which at that point, that kind of sounds like a you problem. And don't get me wrong, damage sucks, but damage doesn't stop you from doing anything until you hit 0 HP. So long as you can do your job before you hit 0 HP and get out, then Mauga can't do anything to stop you from killing his Ana, killing his Zen, killing his Brig, killing his Alari, killing his Moira, any of his supports. You can just jump right back there,
wreak havoc in that backline, and jump right back to your side safe and sound, never once having to even show your face to that Mauga. And you might say, okay, that's nice and all, but none of my teammates can reach me. They have to get through the Mauga to reach where I'm, attacking. And so I'm stuck in a situation where it's going to be just me versus both supports and maybe even both DPS. That could be a 1v4. What the hell? That's going to be awful. Well, here's the thing. If it is a 1v4, you're probably going to struggle to get a kill. I would agree. Counterpoint, and I fully acknowledge this doesn't feel good, but it is true. If it's a 1v4, if there are 4 people hard focusing you to stop you from getting this one kill on the support, and there's just one of you, you're occupying literally 4/5 of the enemy team single-handedly. You are literally taking all of the attention and resources currently of 80% of the entire capabilities of the enemy team are currently focused on just stopping you from killing one of them. And don't get me wrong, they probably will stop you. That's a shit ton of resources. But if you can jump back out of there alive, even if you got 0 kills, even if you just jumped in there, took some damage, blocked some of it, got the fuck out of there, even if that's all you did and just got some ult charge for yourself, but you didn't actually get a kill, you have done so much for your team. Because while it might not look like it, you didn't get a kill, at the end of the day, if they're busy 4v1ing you in the backline, doesn't that mean that the Mauga stuck on the front line is currently stuck in a 1v4 with your team? And if that's the case, what the fuck are they scared of? Especially because Mauga can only really farm tanks. DPS and supports are such smaller targets that they have to get right into his face, like literally breathing down his neck, for him to be able to do good damage to them. So unironically, DPS and supports are pretty favoured in a 1v1 against Mauga, and this isn't even a 1v1, it's a 4v1. So chances are, when you jump back, that Mauga's dead if you truly were in a situation where the entire enemy team peeled just to stop you from getting your kill. So even if you didn't get a kill on the scoreboard, you essentially caused that Mauga to die by forcing all of those resources and all that attention onto you. And you might say, okay, cool, but that's only if everyone jumps back to protect the support. What if they don't jump back to protect the support? What if I really do just go for this one support and no one comes to help them, and then it is a 4v4? There's 4 enemies fighting my 4, teammates. Well, don't get me wrong, that could be a bit spooky, especially because, you're the tank, and the one that they've got missing is one support, not one tank. So obviously, they have a tank and you don't, so you're probably going to lose some space while you're gone, and that might make it a little bit harder to retreat. But if you're Doomfist, and you get a chance to truly 1v1 a support in their backline with no help, and they're not going to get any peel, you should be winning that. 99% chance you kill them there. I understand, obviously it feels like shit, trying to jump the back line when it's Brigana and they're both, defending each other with their fucking lives, that's really, really rough. But if you just jump the back line, and there's just a Zen chilling back there, and there's, no other support around, there's no Suzus, there's no immortality fields, damn, that's a free kill. You can just take out one of their supports and then jump back to your team. And you might lose a little bit of ground, but that's 1 support gone from the Mauga, 2 supports for you. You're slowly getting a bit of an advantage over him. So just keep doing that for a little bit longer, and eventually you're going to end up wiping out his backline. The Mauga's going to end up with no heals, and then the Mauga's going to be a sitting duck that has to run backwards for his life. Now, don't get me wrong, all of this I'm saying still applies to all dive tanks, not just Doomfist. But I want to say something specially for Doomfist now. I think the big thing that makes Doomfist so good and kind of distinguishes him from the other dive tanks against Mauga is simply the fact he has Punch. Because while Punch isn't good at killing Mauga, it's very good at putting him in a situation where he almost guaranteed dies, even if it didn't technically kill him. Essentially, when I play Doomfist into Mauga, I do play a little bit differently, because usually it's pretty rare that you peel for people as Doomfist, but you do it a bit more often against Mauga, because every now and then you'll be about to jump in for a dive, and maybe you're already on the enemy side of the map, but then just as you're about to go for maybe a punch on a support or something, then you hear in the distance the sound of Mauga using Overrun, and you know that he's behind you and he's running into your team. And you know where the supports are, you know they're back here because you were about to jump on them anyway. So how about change your plans? Instead of jumping on the supports, jump back to where the Mauga is and actually fight him for once. Why? Because he just used Overrun. He doesn't have Overrun. And he just ran in too, so he got closer to your team. If you jump back and then cancel that into a punch like mid-air with your slam, and then punch him further into your team, further behind a wall where no one can see him, he's going to be stuck in a 5v1 where he's got no heals. because he doesn't have the mobility to get out, and you just punched him even further behind the wall, and he can't walk out to safety now. You can all just collapse on top of him and melt him. And even Cardiac Overdrive will not save you from a 5 versus 1. So Doomfist is a pretty good matchup against Mauga, because not only is he tearing up your back line, but the entire time he is, at any moment, if you use Overrun a little bit sloppily, or you get a bit cocky and think you can go in deep, that Doomfist on a dime can just change his mind, stop diving your back line, and just punch you into his back line and melt you before you can even walk again. And lastly, yes, I fully acknowledge that simply pressing cage fight against Doomfist is all Mauga has to do to counter you. However, I think that because it's something that's hard to see, some people fail to see the bigger picture here. Yes, if he drops a cage on you, it feels shit, and yes, you basically die for free. But once again, unfortunately, this is something you have to get used to when you play dive tanks. Sometimes you will do things for your team that look really bad to your team, when really it's pretty good, it just doesn't show up on the scoreboard. And let's be real, if Mauga is having to resort to solo ulting you with cage fight just to get rid of you, just so his backline isn't perma-dead, aren't you kind of winning that exchange? Like, cage fight can wipe teams, and he's using it just to kill you, because he's that desperate, because you're fucking up that much that he has to use his entire ultimate that can wipe teams just to get rid of you. And I'm not even done yet. If it was just that, I don't think I'd be satisfied. And for a while, I really couldn't put my finger on if I really wanted to say the Doomfist matchup is one of the better matchups, because of that fact, that I was thinking to myself, like, I mean, it feels good that, like, yeah, he has to solo ult you, but still, that doesn't change the fact that if you are the thing that's shutting him down, if he's correct that you're the reason he can't win, and he does start solo ulting you, he probably doesn't fucking need his ult to win anymore. Once you're out of the game, because he just keeps solo ulting you, like, what the fuck do people do against a Mauga that just gets constant free kills on their tank and just gets, and like, you know, they don't have a tank essentially, but the enemy team does, and he's just running into their fate? What do you do about that? And don't get me wrong, obviously that does suck, but here's the thing. That assumes he's going to be getting cage fight every couple minutes. And usually a Mauga will get cage fight every couple minutes. But here's the thing. Cage fight isn't a cheap ultimate. It just feels like it because Mauga gets ludicrous amounts of ult charge from all the damage he does. But what if he doesn't do damage? I know this sounds really dumb, but like, Mauga can't do anything but farm tank. And if you're the tank, and you're smaller than most other tanks, and you constantly, like, got better mobility than him, and you constantly play at places where Mauga isn't, you constantly avoid him, you constantly make sure that he never has a chance to just get free shots on you, where is Mauga getting his ult charge from exactly? If you play a good game of Doomfist against Mauga, he's probably only getting 2 cage fights the whole game, maybe 3. And sure, yeah, it fucking sucks that means you're going to guaranteed die 2 times to something that's basically completely out of your control, just because he decides, I want to ruin your day and your day specifically. I am now going to press the button that says kill Doomfist specifically. But at the end of the day, if he's getting shat on, but he gets 2 free kills on you the whole game, he's still getting shat on. Again, it sounds really dumb, but genuinely, I feel like whenever I play Doomfist against Mauga, it's the only time I feel like I'm actually in control of the game. It feels like the only time where it's actually like, okay, whether I win or lose is actually based on my skill. You know, a lot of the times with Orisa, with Sigma, it can feel like, well, I mean, my skill is a factor, but at the end of the day, if my DPS doesn't just shoot him while I'm shielding him off, or if my supports just don't heal me while I'm busy fighting him when I'm Orisa, I could think to myself, I could just still lose, you know. And even with Zarya, I know I can't really deal with him easily. I know that, like, I can only slowly take space from him. I can't rush it. Whereas with Doomfist, I know if I can just play well, I can tear apart his backline and leave him stranded. And he won't have even seen me. He won't have been able to even do a single thing to me. He won't have even known it's happened until it's already over. It's just going to be really difficult. And lastly, there is one last reason why I think Doomfist has the upper hand against Mauga. But I really do think it is an amazing example of how terribly designed Mauga is, that, like, I even have to say this as, like, a reason why he's S tier counter to Mauga. Okay. I fully acknowledge that this is not a realistic expectation, and I'm not trying to pretend like I do this shit all the time. I don't. I've only pulled this off twice. Intentionally, at least. I've pulled it off a couple other times by complete, like, lucky accident. But if you predict the Mauga's about to cage fight you, punch does cancel cage fight. Now, if I remember correctly, when I looked it up on the wiki, the cast time of cage fight is 0.65 seconds. You have to react to him using cage fight within 0.65 seconds of the voice line beginning. Make sure your punch is off cooldown for that. Make sure that he's not so far away you have to spend longer than 0.65 seconds charging the punch and going over to reach him, and then stun him out of it. Don't get me wrong, I fully acknowledge this is such a ludicrous standard to be expected to play to. But it is possible. And if you can do that, you eat his entire ultimate with a 4-second fucking cooldown, and he gets nothing. Do you understand how huge that is? Don't get me wrong, that it feels so unfair that you have to do something that difficult just to not die for free as Doomfist. But if you can do that, if you can stun him out of his ult, that is enormous. That basically gives you free reign to take over the lobby for the next few minutes, while also completely taking away what otherwise could have been a free team kill for Mauga. And in fairness, you can do some things to make it more consistent. In particular, it seems like a good practice is that when you know they want to cage fight you, and you know they have cage fight, and you're kind of like waiting for it, anticipating it, obviously keep your punch off cooldown if you can help it, but another thing is, it might be the one time you want to get in Mauga's face, because the closer you are to Mauga, the less you have to charge at your punch, and that means you can just tap it instead of having to charge. Obviously, if you have to charge, you'll almost never get them. And if you can just tap it and quickly cancel him out of it, that means that obviously it's easier to cancel it, you don't have to react so stupidly quickly, but on top of that, he's more likely to cage fight when you're close to him anyway. Like, if you get right in his face, he's more likely to cage fight anyway, because he's like, shit, well, you're definitely not going to get out of this one. You're not like, if you were close to the edge, you could have quickly slammed out, which, by the way, is another bit of counterplay. If you know he's about to drop it and you don't have punch, you can use slam to get out if you're really quick, and just jump out before the cage drops on you. But, but if that's not an option, then getting really close, it kind of tells him, look, I can't jump out, I'm too close to the center. Oh, look, oh no, I'm so helpless, I'm standing right in front of Mauga and I don't have a way to get out. Oh no, whatever shall I do? And then you just wait for him to press the button and bonk! Just take that ultimate right away from him. Oh boy. Anyway, okay, sorry, I just realized that we're nearly at the end of this list, and honestly, I could stand to shuffle these around. Honestly, I think I'm gonna... Yeah. Maybe Roadhog really is E. Yeah, I'm gonna go with E for now. Okay, so, sorry, I just wanted to do that. Yeah. Anyway, Doomfist, yeah, genuinely, I think I'll stick by that. I think I'll stick by the idea that Doomfist is like the S-tier pick against Mauga. Genuinely the best counter, if you can play him well, I think. I really do think. Again, you avoid him, you don't let him get ult charge off of you, you focus his backline, you only go back to peel if you hear that the Mauga has wasted his overrun and has used it to go in rather than get out, so that you can jump back and punch him further into your team, so it's a 5v1. And you do whatever you can to either avoid cage fight or cancel cage fight, so that he's going to get less cage fights because of the fact he can't farm you. Ultimately, that's a recipe for success, especially because you got to remember that while it is true that your teammates will have to deal with the Mauga alone because you're just ignoring him, you got to remember as well that Mauga has a much harder time killing DPS and supports. It is actually so much easier to kill tanks for him, even slightly smaller tanks than usual. If they are a tank, he will kill them stupid easy. Whereas, just for example, think about how much harder it is for Mauga to kill a Tracer or Genji than like a Ramattra. It doesn't matter that the Ramattra has more stats. At the end of the day, if he tries to shoot a Tracer or a Genji, he's going to be having a nightmare doing that. And while the Tracer isn't going to burst kill him or anything, his health is going to be slowly whittling down the whole time he basically can't land a shot on her. And all of his survivability tools basically don't do jack shit against her because they rely on him landing shots. But with that said, oh boy. Am I going to drop something really spicy? So, because maybe I'm biased because I have good win rates on, like a lot of my best win rate tanks are dive tanks, the only exception being Junker Queen, as I mentioned earlier. Oh, Junker Queen and Mauga, because of course Mauga's stupid. But yeah, aside from Junker Queen and Mauga, my highest win rate tanks are all dive tanks. However, I'm going to make an exception for D.Va. I think most of the dive tanks, I'm going to be like a bit like contrarian and actually say, yeah, they're actually pretty good against Mauga. For as awful as it feels to play them, in reality, they are pretty good. But D.Va, though, I'm actually going to go against the grain. Again, from what I've heard, it seems like most people think D.Va's pretty good against Mauga, like maybe up here. But like, I'm not going to lie. Oh boy, am I really going to full send this? Fuck it, I'm full sending it. F. Genuinely F. Genuinely, I think Roadhog is better than D.Va against Mauga. No joke. Okay, so here's the logic as to why D.Va's supposed to be better than Mauga, and I won't say, like, I get it. Like, I understand it. The idea is that Defense Matrix deletes his shots, which means that he can't get lifesteal, as just like with a lot of these other ones. And, I mean, that is pretty powerful. And hey, also you're a dive tank, so you've got the mobility to escape Mauga if you need to. And hey, that's also true. Here's why I think, I'm not gonna lie, I think all of it is bullshit. First of all, D.Va is a fucking humongous target with the largest health bar in the game. That means she is an absolute feast for Mauga to just farm ult charge off of. You give Mauga so much fucking ult charge as D.Va, just because he has to do so much damage to kill you, which gives him so much ult charge, and you're so easy to shoot. As well as that, while it is true that D.Va does have more mobility than Mauga, D.Va's got the poorest mobility of all the dive tanks, so she's the only one that can't even, like, quickly get away from Mauga. Her escape from Mauga is relatively slow, which gives Mauga ample time to finish her off before she can turn the corner. Especially because Overrun, honestly, isn't that much slower than Boosters, and really the only difference is that Boosters is on a 4-second cooldown and Overrun's on a 6-second cooldown. Now, don't get me wrong, yes, it is powerful to be able to shut off Mauga's ability to deal damage and therefore his ability to self-heal as well. Here's the problem. The only thing you can fire while using your defense matrix are your rockets, which basically just tickle Mauga. They will never kill him. So once again, similarly to Reinhardt, when you put up defense matrix, you need your team, you need them to shoot that fucking Mauga. If they do not shoot that fucking Mauga, you are going to burn your only defensive cooldown as one of the biggest, fattest targets as a tank in the game, and you're going to be stranded in the middle of nowhere as just free food for the enemy team. Because you burned all 2.5 seconds of your defense matrix just to turn off Mauga for a couple seconds, dealt 0 damage to him the entire time, and just prayed your DPS would shoot him while you were DMing him, and they just fucking didn't. So in my experience, for as much as people like to say defense matrix is so good against Mauga, when I actually play D.Va against Mauga, it feels like what happens is, you see Mauga, and it's like, okay, oh, right, yeah, I forgot, Mauga's got better range than me, so already I'm getting set on fire before I even get within his, like, actual kill range, just but, like, you know, with his single gun firing, he's already setting me on fire. So, okay, already he's got better poke damage than me, shit. Well, better get close. Oh, wait, that's, like, the one thing I never want to do against Mauga, now I'm just making myself an easy target. Oh, shit, well, time to put up my defense matrix. Haha, I'm deleting all his shots, and, well, he's still full health, but at least I'm deleting all his shots, and, oh god, I've only got like half a second of this left. Hey, guys, is anyone gonna do something? Oh god, let me get out of here. You try and boost us out, and then he just melts you, like, before you can even get away, or even if you get away, he just chases you with Overrun and kills you. And don't think you're gonna be able to slip away his baby D.Va either. He's going to kill you. I think there are a lot of oversights being made with D.Va. I think the fact she has less mobility than the other dive tanks doesn't mean she can just dive backline and ignore Mauga like a lot of other people can. I think the fact that her defense matrix is so short-lived and she can't really do anything else meaningful while doing it completely negates its potential to be used to cut off Mauga's damage. At least Sigma can shield and deal damage to Mauga, and he still needs help. So, like, Jesus Christ, D.Va has it bad. And at least with other tanks, a lot of the times, you can play at medium range rather than close range to win against Mauga, like Junker Queen, like Zarya, like Orisa. But with D.Va, you do, like, 0 damage at anything except point blank. But if you get point blank, literally, you can't even out-damage the self-heal that Mauga has with Cardiac Overdrive. Like, you are physically incapable of killing Mauga if he has his cooldowns as D.Va. And he basically instantly demands you to burn all of your defense matrix and your boosters just to simply not die for being near him. So yeah, I'll say this now. If you have been picking D.Va to counterpick Mauga, I seriously suggest stop. I know it's a popular opinion that she's decent against Mauga. I really think it's just not true. I think I've yet to see... I don't know, was there one? No, I don't think I can remember it. I don't think I've seen a single game since Mauga's release where a D.Va has beaten him. Whether it's been me playing the D.Va or me playing the Mauga, usually me playing the Mauga if I'm brutally honest with myself. Whenever I see D.Va as Mauga, I just think, oh yeah, cool, free win. Because, like, it's literally just like, oh, so I can just burn their entire defense matrix just by existing and holding left click and right click. And then, like, they either have to run away and give me a shit ton of space, or if they don't run away, I get a free kill. And like, what do? They just sit there and watch, like, sit there and watch as every single team fight goes the exact same fucking way. D.Va flies towards me, she pops a rocket, she puts up a defense matrix, she's like, haha, deleting all your bullets, fucker, haha, oh, my defense matrix is out, I'm gonna get away, oh, I'm dead. Just every time. And again, the only other thing they can do, when they finally wise up and they're like, okay, shit, right, okay, clearly I've been playing this too aggressively, they spend the whole game hiding behind walls, looking at the rest of their team play like, sorry guys, can't do anything. And, like, I don't even blame them. I'm not even saying these guys are being dumb. That's literally what the matchup is like. Like, I can't believe people think this is a good matchup. It's literally just like, you sit there and you watch other people play the game. You watch the Mauga run into your team, and you watch your teammates try and fight him, and it's like, well, what do you want from me? If I go into him, you say I'm feeding, and I am really, because I do keep dying and getting nothing done, but if I don't go into him, you say I'm not doing shit. And the shitty thing is, they're kind of right both ways. If you try and fight Mauga as D.Va, you're feeding, and if you try and play defensive, you can't do shit. The best thing you can do is just stand near a single other teammate and use defense matrix on them. That's basically all you can do in the matchup. You cannot do anything offensive, you cannot take charge. Even if you try to drop a fucking D.Va bomb, he can just press overrun and instantly halve the damage it does to him, meaning he can probably tank the explosion point blank unless he's already damaged. So yeah, I think it's truly delusional that people are saying that D.Va's decent against Mauga. I think D.Va is actually the single worst tank in the game you can pick against Mauga. I genuinely think Roadhog has it better. Because at least Roadhog, as I said, can land that nasty surprise hook on him, pull him around a corner, put him in a pig pen, and burst kill him before his supports can save him. D.Va can't even do that. There is nothing that D.Va can do to turn this game around. The only thing D.Va can do is avoid the Mauga and focus his back line. But if you want to do that, why the hell are you not playing Winston, Bull, or Doomfist? Winston, Bull, and Doomfist all have better mobility, and so they can get away from Mauga easier and chase targets in the back line easier. As well as that, they also don't get farmed as easily as D.Va does, so that means they don't give like the Mauga as much ult charge for free. So yeah, I understand that, like, part of me wants to say I shouldn't say D.Va's F tier, because at the end of the day, like, being able to ignore the Mauga and just go for the backline is really powerful. But it's just like, why would you do that with D.Va when every other option is better? So yeah, Winston. I'm really, man, actually, where the fuck do I put Winston? Okay. Fuck, I'm not trying to be contrarian on purpose. I really am not. But like, I've just had experiences playing these games like against Mauga and as Mauga, where I feel like sometimes I'm being fucking gaslit by what everyone else is saying. I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna say it. I believed the idea that Winston was unplayable into Mauga for so long that I was too scared to even play the matchup. Like, if I saw a Mauga, I'd just swap off Winston instantly. I just wouldn't even entertain the notion. But more recently, I've stopped doing that because I've been playing a lot of Winston recently, and there's been more Mauga, so obviously I've seen Mauga a little bit, and I've decided, you know what, no, I really want to stick at Winston. I want to see if I can really push myself on Winston. My win rate's going up with him. It's relatively high right now. I want to see if I can keep that up. And so I'll keep playing him into Mauga, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm being a fucking idiot, I'm going to have to swap later, but sure, I'll give it a go. And I'm not going to lie, I have yet to lose a game as Winston against Mauga. Now, in fairness, I haven't played that many games as Winston against Mauga. It's like 3 or 4. So, I mean, that's not the biggest thing in the world, but still. I'm not going to lie. I feel like the matchup isn't as bad as people say. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not easy. This is like the case with all dive tanks, but like still, I think the best way I could describe the matchup is it's insanely stressful, but don't let that fool you into thinking it's bad. Like, it is really scary. It is absolutely terrifying trying to play against Mauga and Winston. But just because it's terrifying doesn't mean that you're the one who's losing. It's basically all the same as Doomfist, except you don't unfortunately have the ability to cancel his cage fight or punch him into your team to get a free 5v1 on him. No, unfortunately you don't have that, but fortunately what you do have is an even better ability to dive back lines, thanks to the fact that it's more consistent with Bubble Shield. You can kind of stay deep for longer and be fine for longer, whereas with Doomfist all you got is Power Block, and if they got a CC that could go badly. And you also do have Primal Rage, which, while it isn't super good against Mauga himself, it does allow you to go super deep into his backline without needing much support, which can help with the fact that teammates will often struggle to close the gap between you and the rest of them. Overall, Winston's definitely worse than Doomfist, but dare I say, I think he's still got an A-tier matchup against Mauga. God, am I insane? I'll just say this. I recently had a game on Gibraltar. It was really fun. I was Winston into a Mauga. And I unironically went 23-0. 0 deaths game into a Mauga. And, like, I was really happy with that game, but, like, I don't think I did anything crazy. I mean, I feel like I played well, obviously, but I don't think I did anything like, whoa, that was fucking insane! It was mostly just playing it safe, knowing where to retreat to, knowing where my supports are, knowing how to manage my cooldowns, knowing what cooldowns he's going to use to try and screw me over. And so long as I played it slow and thought it through and didn't, jump in without thinking, I always thought, okay, if I jump in, how am I going to get out of here? And, like, think multiple ways how I can get out before I go for an engage. As long as I just, have backup plans, think ahead. It just kind of seems like you can't kill the Mauga in a 1v1, of course, but you can just cause so much havoc in his backline that he can't be effective on the front line, just like with Doomfist. So yeah, the main reason why I kind of bought the idea that, like, Winston would be useless in this matchup is because the fact, in theory, I'm thinking, okay, so you jump on a Mauga. Now, obviously, he's going to set you on fire immediately, and the second you're on fire, you've got about 2 seconds until you're fully fucking dead already. So that's wonderful. So by 2 seconds in, maximum, if you're not already dead by 2 seconds, you're going to have to drop a bubble shield. Now the bubble shield will save you, but the bubble shield, not only could the Mauga just overrun through it or just walk through it maybe if it's close enough, but on top of that, of course it's only got 800 health, which 800 is a lot, but against Mauga, 800 is nothing. So he's going to break the shield super fast, and then once he's broken the shield, he's just going to melt you, and it's probably not going to have been 6 seconds like by then, so you probably won't be able to jump out. That's what I thought. I thought that if you tried to play Winston into Mauga, how it would essentially go would be you jump on the Mauga, you zap him a bit, you get set on fire, you put down bubble shield, you zap him a bit, and then your bubble shield breaks, and it's like, okay, I've still got 2 seconds until my leap is back. I have 100 health left, I'm on fire, and there's a Mauga directly in front of my face, and I have no cooldowns. Shit. And, like, I thought that would just be how it goes every time. But honestly, it kind of seems like I underestimate the strength of bubble. 800 isn't that much to Mauga. He still breaks it really fast. But I have to remember that he can't set the bubble on fire, and so he can't, quote-unquote, headshot it. And so that does mean he's doing significantly less damage to the bubble than he is to me. Which means that when I drop that bubble, it's not usually getting destroyed, like, literally instantly. Now, don't get me wrong, it breaks pretty fucking fast. It does seem to break in about 2 to 3 seconds, which sounds really bad, but that does mean you only have to go about 1 second of no bubble if you go for that before you can jump out. So long as when you jump on him, you make sure you're also relatively close to some cover you can kind of dip in and out of. That means that, honestly, you can probably compensate for that missing 1 second and relatively frequently jump on the Mauga, zap him a bit, and then get out safely, so long as you have all your cooldowns when you do it and you have some cover to use. And that really changes a lot, because don't get me wrong, you're usually going to be jumping the backline anyway, but if you literally just couldn't even interact with the Mauga, that would be a massive problem. But the fact that you actually can kind of give him a bit of pressure, you can kind of, mess him around a bit, not to mention that Bubble Shield is infamously effective at cutting off a tank from their heals, and Mauga really needs his heals, so if you just place him inside a bubble, it's like, oh fuck, I gotta get out of here. Sometimes, every now and then, I'll even force a Mauga to burn their overrun instantly just by putting them in a bubble, because they just need to get out of that bubble as fast as possible so they don't die. And if that's the case, then, like, cool, there goes their overrun, obviously that cooldown's pretty finicky, it's pretty annoying to get rid of, and it's pretty powerful, so it's pretty important to get out of the way. So, honestly, yeah, I think that Winston's not too bad against Mauga. Again, you just got to try and focus his backline when possible. And you got to play it very safe. If you ever do jump anywhere near the Mauga, you got to plan ahead. You got to make sure you're not just like, yes, I shall simply jump in and not die. It should be like, okay, I'm going to jump in at this location. I'm going to have cover right there. I'm going to use bubble as late as possible. I'm going to make sure I have bubble first, of course, in the first place. And I know that I can jump out at this angle, or this angle, and hopefully get back to my supports once I land. Wrecking Ball, last one on the list. God, where do I put Wrecking Ball? With how much of a Wrecking Ball connoisseur I used to be, you probably thought, like, I'd have an easy time, and I'd have, like, some really hot takes, like I'd put fucking Wrecking Ball in S. I actually really don't know. I really don't. Low key, I think Wrecking Ball is the worst out of these three. I think he's got to go below Winston. Bubble Shield is doing so much more than I imagined. I thought Winston would be the worst one against Mauga. I thought Wrecking Ball would be better. Because they both have the same issue of being way too big and easy to farm. And not being able to put up a fight against him in a 1v1. But in fairness, I thought, well, Wrecking Ball can roll around. That's like better mobility. Like he probably can at least like keep his distance pretty well and like harass the Mauga. And hey, it's not as good as Doomfist Punch, but you can still occasionally kill the Mauga by booping him further into your team when he burns like a overrun too aggressively. That could always be the case. But like then I realized just how much Bubble Shield does for you. And you are really... And Minefield isn't that good against him either. It's not all the time. Obviously, he still takes a decent amount of damage, but a decent amount of the time, if you Minefield a Mauga, he can just use Overrun, run through the entire Minefield, tank all the hits, and not even fucking die, and then land next to his supports and get full healed. And it's like, oh. So my entire fucking ultimate, I spent a whole, this massive part of the game building up, you now got to completely counteract by pressing a single 6-second cooldown. Okay, cool, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go with B. I think I'm actually genuinely gonna put him under Orisa. Man, that's crazy. Yeah, because, I want to say that Orisa should be lower, because even though it's easier to counter him on Orisa, you have to have good heals, otherwise it doesn't work. But then, by the same token, honestly, if you've got a Mauga causing a real problem for your team, and you're Wrecking Ball, and you obviously are just insta-dead if you get put in a cage fight, just like Winston is, if that's the case, then I think as Wrecking Ball, you're just as reliant on having good DPS that follow up on your dives, as you are reliant on having good supports that heal you as playing as Orisa in this matchup. I feel like they both are super reliant on their teammates, just different ones. Of course, Orisa for supports and Wrecking Ball for DPS. And if you don't have good DPS with Wrecking Ball, I imagine that you will cause a whole bunch of havoc in the back line, but it'll just never lead to anything. That, the Mauga will still just be able to run through your team, and... Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with that. I think I'm going to put Ball in B, but I admit, this is, despite the fact I used to be a Wrecking Ball connoisseur, even though I'm slowly picking it back up, I'm coming to the end of an era, man. I really like the idea of still being the Wrecking Ball guy, but I feel like I'm just washed now. I'm just washed. I just don't have the Wrecking Ball sauce anymore. I don't know. Every now and then I have a game where I do really well on Wrecking Ball. I've still got the game sense, but I just don't have the, oomph. I don't have the being able to perform anymore. Because I've still had some decent games ever since I realized that Wrecking Ball was finally getting decent again, you know? I've had some games, to be oh, is Wrecking Ball finally back? And... I've won some games, and I've had some games where I've had some good stats. I've had some games where I've turned it around when we were losing, but they don't feel the same. I feel like it's yes, I do well, but none of it looks cool or impressive like it used to. A bit of a side tangent, but it's already a long video, so I thought I might as well throw it on the end. So yeah, I've kind of slowly shifted away from Ball because I just feel like. Now that I can finally play Doomfist is more versatile, and it feels like if I don't want to play Doomfist, then it feels like Winston is the one I'm more naturally better at this point. It could just be that Winston's a bit easier mechanically. Obviously not strategically, but obviously Winston and Bull are both really difficult strategically. But on the mechanic side, obviously Winston's not too difficult. It's mostly just primal rage juggling, which isn't easy, but there's harder things in the game. So yeah, man, I'm really just thinking, do I stick by this tier list? Because the thing is, the main thing that's nagging me is I really did think I'd have more tanks in the low tiers. But, man... Maybe this is just one of those things where, I guess I always want to think in my head, yeah, I can just be good, and I can just do it. I mean, I know it's just not just a me thing, but still, Maybe it's just that aspect, but, I'm even looking at some of these that aren't that high up, and I'm thinking, man, they should be higher. But I already think this list is too top heavy. I do think to myself, I look at Ramattra and I think, nah, Ramatra's a B, maybe even an A, because it feels yeah, I've got that much control. But ultimately, I have to be real with myself. I don't think Ramatra's better than Sigma realistically, and I don't think he's better than these. I don't think he's better than these. But I think there's gaps between these, and I think this is just how it has to be. Yeah. In fairness, I guess, you know what, that would make a lot of sense. I mean, I literally was trying to tell myself that the Roadhog matchup is just a skill diff and you just have to be good at the game when, like, it's fucking Roadhog into Mauga. So yeah, maybe I should, I think it's generally good to try and take as much of an attitude of it's not out of your control, you can just win. It might be unfair, but it's still in your control. If you do really, really well, you can still win this. I think there's a lot of situations like that in Overwatch where, like, you can be in a game and people can say unwinnable. And, like, I think that essentially it's kind of a thing where there's a bit of truth to both sides, where, like, there are loads of fucking games in Overwatch where, due to things that can be completely out of your control and not your fault at all, they can be so much harder than they should be, and they can be unfairly hard. They could be a level of difficulty that isn't fair to ask of you. However, I would say it is very rare that you truly walk into a game of Overwatch where you truly could not have done anything, no matter how well you played. And I mean, I guess because I have that perspective, and I do still do a bit of grumbling because I'm like, it's not fair that I have to do this much shit or whatever, or it's not fair that sometimes even someone else on my team has to do this much shit because someone else is dropping the ball and they have to be the one to carry, like, the role or whatever. Like, if there's just, like, a support who's just, like, I don't know, feeding as Moira and has literally not even 1,000 heals by the end of the game, then maybe the other Ana has to, like, basically solo carry the entire support role, do all the healing while also fighting off all the, like, dives because the Moira's never going to help them and heal them while they're in trouble. If you've got a situation like that, maybe the fact that I have that sort of attitude of, like, always wanting to say, yeah, it's fair for me to complain about this because it is unfair, but, like, at the end of the day, like, I could just win this if I was just good enough. Maybe the fact that I try and hold on to that attitude is what makes these lists a little bit top-heavy and skewed. Man, I mean, look at this now and I'm like, do I want to move Wrecking Ball down to C? But I think I'll stick with this. Actually, no, fuck it. I will put Wrecking Ball down to C. I will. I'll even put him down there. Man, that feels bad, but, like, I am thinking to myself, I genuinely feel like I have more control over how things go on Ramattra over Wrecking Ball against Mauga. Because, like, I can choose to do things. I can play the... Actually, this is a better way to put it. This is why the Wrecking Ball one is so hard to put my finger on. Because most of the time against Mauga, you just can't even play the video game. As Ball against Mauga, you can play the video game. Aside from when you get cage for, you can play the video game. You can go wherever the fuck you want. Mauga can't stop you. But, like, nothing you do will actually have an impact on the outcome of the game unless your DPS follows up. And that's what's infuriating. That you can, like, you can be doing loads of things, and you can be not dying doing those things, and those things could be cool or skillful or impressive, and you could be doing so much back there. But if no one ever gets the opportunity to follow up on what you're doing, or if your DPS are just bad, then, like, it kind of doesn't amount to anything. And that's always a little bit of a problem with dive characters, but I think Wrecking Ball has it the worst. And especially in the Mauga matchup, it just feels like sometimes you do a bunch of stuff in the backline, but the actual outcome of that is you got a higher damage number on the scoreboard, but you didn't get any elims, and nothing happened, and the enemy team still won. You know? Whereas at least with Ramattra, there's lots of situations where you can't play the game as much, where there's only a few abilities you can use, where you can only stay in a fight for a few seconds before you already have to run. But everything you do feels really impactful. They're almost like polar opposites, where you get brief windows where you can actually have control of the game, and they're very brief, and it's so unfair that you only have this smaller window. But it is a window where you can take control of the game, and if you do take that window, you often get quite strong control of the game all of a sudden. And with Wrecking Ball, it's just the opposite, where you always have control over what you do in the game, but it never leads to anything. Yeah. Yeah, I think I will stick with it. I think this is, like, a pretty decent list. Again, I'm expecting there's going to be some people fucking losing their minds over the fact that I put Doomfist at the top. But I don't know, man. I played the Doomfist Mauga matchup so much more than every other one of these matchups. I really do think it is just a skill issue. And don't get me wrong, I don't say that to be a dick, because it is. I will also say you have to be. It's so hard. And sometimes, like, I'll have a game on Doomfist where I do well in terms of pure stats, but we still lose against a Mauga, because sometimes it really can just be that, like, you dive in the back line. But unfortunately, and I guess this is the reason why I hate Mauga more than I hate Orisa. Unfortunately, the fact that Mauga can self-heal with Cardiac Overdrive, even if it's not necessarily consistent, means that sometimes, even though generally without his supports he's dead, sometimes he's fine without his supports. And that's what I really don't like, because, like, someone like Mauga or Orisa, they're supposed to be countered by you killing their supports. But, like, Mauga, sometimes he can just self-heal enough that he doesn't need supports, and that's really fucking annoying, because it means it's kind of a coin flip when you kill his backline, whether he's going to fall over or whether he's just going to mow down the rest of your backline while you're not there. Whereas with Orisa, if you kill her supports, she dies. She just falls over in the next couple seconds. Anyway, I'm already rambling a little bit, so how about I close this out? I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned a little bit, and maybe willing to try some of these matchups out, see how you feel like they go. Especially some of these dive tanks. Like, you hear so much about people complaining how bad it feels to play a dive tank into Mauga, and it feels bad. But it's really, really fucking important to know the difference between what feels bad and what is bad in Overwatch. And the matchup of Doomfist or Winton against Mauga is an amazing example of it feels bad, but you're actually winning, as much as it might not feel like it. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.